We pay appliances, washing machine. I hope it's really a $5. Got something stuck in the room.
Oh, looks like we're on.
You are live.
Whoa. I think we're in the mountains. Good morning, everybody. We'll call the session to order.
Dennis, your mic,
And I
Dennis.
think
Microphone.
We were asked this morning to speak in the open session. At least we can't use the mics and close, but speak clearly directly into the mic, because apparently at the last session, the audio wasn't very good on the recording. So if we can try to remember and remind each other if we should miss it. Okay, I think we have a resolution to go into closed.
Moved by Councilor Rovell, seconded by Councilor Martin. Resolved that council resolve itself into committee of the whole closed session as authorized under section 239 of the Municipal Act to consider adoption of the closed minutes of meeting held April 20th, 2022, adoption of closed minutes of special meetings held May 4th, 2022, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board as it relates to property acquisition for the KMB Trail. Any objections?
and resolve the council. No, that's next. Okay, any questions on that? Having seen none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. So we'll move into close, and Chris, if you could disconnect us from the system.
Toronto Maple Leaf.
They're out. If Gillespie shows up,
Counselor Higgins, are you on that line?
You are live.
Yep, I am here.
Oh, good. Sorry we missed you in the closed session, but we'll bring you up to date later.
Okay, thank you.
we're not that.
He looks pretty good by the beach.
Okay, I think we have a resolution to move out of the closed.
Moved by Counselor Vanderwall, seconded by Counselor Smith, resolve that council rise from committee of the whole without reporting.
All in favor? Carried. Do we have any pecuniary interest in the nature thereof to declare today? Having seen none, we'll record that and move on. And just before we move on, I just want to remind you that we were asked to speak clearly into the mics today because the last session we had trouble reading the audio when we reviewed the recording. Okay, so now we have a resolution to adopt the minutes.
Minutes of meeting held May 18th, 2022, moved by Counselor Higgs, seconded by Counselor McDonald, resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting held May 18th, 2022 be adopted.
Questions on those minutes? All in favor? Carried. No deputations today. And we got the resolution to move into committee of a whole.
Moved by Deputy Warden Higgins, seconded by Counselor Smith, that council adjourn India's committee of the whole council with the warden in the chair.
And Ron is ill today somewhat, but thanks for coming in on Zoom, Ron. And I'll take the chair for the next session.
Thank you.
Everybody in favor of that, or do you want somebody else want to do it?
No, go right ahead.
Good, go right ahead. Okay, we have the honor of CAO Kelly Pender giving us his monthly update to show us that he's earning his keep.
Looks like he said some meetings.
Yes. That's what we pay him for.
That's it.
Thank you, Warden. Sorry for the delay in getting started there. This is our June the 15th, 2022 report. And as usual, I'll pick a couple of things off each slide. And if there are any questions, available to answer any questions. And if there aren't answers, we'll get back to you on those. It's been a fairly busy month with union negotiations and various other matters, and I would note that the warden of LNA and the warden of Frontenac both attended a number of Frontenac, Leamington Act, and OHT partnership meetings and monthly meetings as well. The Eastern Ontario Housing Summit is today. Two representatives at that, Joe Gallivan, our Director of Planning and Economic Development, and Simon Bolton, our Manager of Community Planning, are both attending that, along with Claire Dobbins from South Frontenac. The purpose of that meeting is to develop a position for the AMO conference with respect to what is Eastern Ontario going to do. The province is committing to about 1.5 million new homes over the next decade, and we want to make sure that Eastern Ontario is ready and willing to move into the housing business and support the province of Manitoba. This is clearly something important to the entire region. At the Eastern Ontario Wards Caucus meeting back in May, as we mentioned, we narrowed down the focus to housing. We're still going to be meeting with various ministries on the Ontario health teams, as well as on long-term care, and the primary focus of the meeting with the multi-ministers in August is going to be on housing. The CAOs met last week to help refine those.
Hey, baby, you okay?
What?
Yeah. 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 So I'm gonna be home really probably around 10 or 11 if that's okay, okay?
In a staffing announcement for the Eastern Ontario Wards Caucus, Tabley Watson has, and you may remember Meredith worked for us for about a year. Meredith is now the manager of policy for the Eastern Ontario Wards Caucus. She began the 1st of May and has attended 2 meetings so far, and she is the one that has been leading the development of the position paper on housing on the plan staff. The Eastern Ontario Leadership Council board meeting was held on June 8th, and the annual general meeting is July the 13th. There are 2 new Eastern Ontario Wards Caucus appointees or nominees to that. Jennifer Murphy from Renfrew and Roger Haley from United Council of Leeds and Grenville. So that will be working its way through the process. A number of different things, and I know this is important to the warden at the blue box transition and the various impacts, and I'm sure your public works managers have been keeping you up to date at the local level on what that's going to mean, but there's a number of different initiatives coming through as a result of that. The flood hazard identification mapping program, we have received funding to assist with the acquisition of LiDAR imagery, which will help with that. As well, there appears to be other funding sources for LiDAR in Ontario coming down the pipe. Kevin has been working on with his working group, GIS managers. So we expect that each municipality will have a much better data with respect to topography of their area, as well as existing buildings and buildings that didn't exist a few years back. So a number of different impacts from the thunderstorm, particularly Highway 7 into the north, and Mayor Higgins and Councillor Martin, I'm sure were heavily involved in the repercussions of that, and the provincial disaster assessment team attended North Frontenac on June 2nd, and the Minister of Municipal Affairs will make a decision with regards to disaster relief funding. So I'll note that portions of the K&P Trail north of 7 were blocked. We're lucky to have a number of different volunteers that have cleared that, but there was a lot of tree damage in that area. Pretty amazing, just the impact of that and how far-reaching it was. And I know the mayor of Peterborough, and speaking to her a couple of weeks back, the city of Peterborough and the environs was heavily impacted right through. My sister lives in Richmond, just outside of Ottawa. It was a very wide spot. A lot of damage and power outages for a number of people for several days. The June marks the National Indigenous Month, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. We have a local group with staff working through improving Indigenous relations, and Debbie and Richard sit on that committee, so we'll be having some recommendations coming out of that. And AMO matters, provincial matters, requesting nominations for the 2022-2024 Board of Directors. In order to participate, you need to choose your comments, and the link On Wednesday, June the 22nd, Conservation Ontario and AMO will be hosting a webinar on recent changes to Phase 2 regulations of the Conservation Authorities Act. And just a reminder that Joe Gallivan, our Director of Planning and Economic Development, sits on the AMO task force that's looking after that issue and the transitions that are happening with conservation authorities. There are 3 significant projects. Just give you a little bit of an update. The administrative building project redevelopment will be considered later in the agenda. And that project dates back to 2013, so we're only 9 years into it, but we're making some progress on that. The communal services business case study, there will be a motion later in the agenda with respect to that. And the RFP for the new paramedic station at 2069 Battersea Road will get released today or tomorrow. So 3 very significant projects that council has been involved in and certainly taken up a lot of staff time as well. And just in terms of the administrative building redevelopment, the task force had a joint meeting with the CRCA on June 8th, last Wednesday. The report is on council agendas for consideration. And if approved, construction would begin as early as the end of this month. And we would have a meeting with the architect tomorrow to firm up these timelines. So we'll have more information and I'll provide an update to council if we move in that direction. And if approved, construction would begin as early as the month and with the completion date of September 2023. And as noted at the meeting, the Conservation Authority would be moving in about the end of the year or early next year into this phase of the project. This is a graphic of the proposed new council chambers and boardroom and related facilities. So a small meeting room, kitchenette, and accessible washrooms, as well as the council chambers that will hold the CRCA board and council and accessible access for mobility issues within the council chamber as well. And this is the main floor plan, as you saw last week, which is providing it again today. The 3 major structural changes are the addition of the boardroom council chambers on the right-hand side, enlarging the reception area and actually creating a reception waiting room area, and providing a space directly in front of the entrance for staff collaboration and for. So next steps, the motion from June 8th is before council today. June 15th, the recommendation gets considered this morning and onto the CRCA board tonight. June 16th would be the award of contract. July 21st or July 1st mobilization. Staff begin working remotely except for selective admin staff. CRCA would moves into the renovated space and we're targeting January 1st, 2023. And hopefully by the end of 23, everybody is back. The communal services business case study. The proposed public meeting again is before council for consideration this morning, is being proposed for July the 13th. The business case study is still in draft, so amendments can be made based upon any input received from other councils or from the general public. It is not final until council approves it, and participating municipalities, all participating municipalities have approved that, whether that's 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or none. So it is still in the draft format. The way the regulation is written is that it doesn't get approved until after we have public consultation. The business case as amended will be recirculated to the 5 municipalities for consideration, at which point you would opt in or opt out. And the business case, just a reminder that the business case is the definitive document. It states that right in the document. The 2 WSP reports are provided for background information only. the guiding document is the business case study. Local planning authority is not affected by the creation of municipal service corporation. That is stated right up front in the business case study. South Frontenac will still make all their planning decisions. They can opt in for communal services. They can opt out. They can ask that a developer participate in the business corporation or not. Nothing is affected at the planning side for a municipality. I just note that recommendation number 44 from the Provincial Housing Task Force that the province will get back to now that they've been re-elected is for the creation of municipal service corporations. So this is a direction supported by provincial policy. The province has implemented about 5 of the 56 recommendations, and what we're hearing is that they'll get back to the remaining ones early in their next term. And the Housing Summit today will be reviewing a number of those recommendations and talking about how they work in rural Ontario, because frankly, a lot of those recommendations are very urban focused. And I think one of the things that the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus does and does very well is provide a rural lens to provincial policies. So that will be part of our presentation at AMO, is where we stand in terms of the Housing Task Force and recommendations contained within it.
We have a question, sir.
Oh, maybe I'll do mine.
I guess it's more of a comment. I know that we've had some concerns about the water issue of creating seniors housing and that, and there's already a roadblock for the project we were doing in Verona, and that raised quite a red flag for us. So I know that they're going to be talking about that for sure.
Yeah, and we've applied for a joint delegation with South Frontenac. Joe and Claire have worked on that. So essentially it isn't that you need to do more work, it's that you need to go through 2 processes. You need to go through the source water protection, and you need to go through the Ministry of Environment. We believe that's not only redundant, but repetitive. So our position, and it's going to be the same with the Wardens Caucus, is that it needs to be one or the other, that there shouldn't be 2 systems where the ministry approves it and the stormwater, the source water protection committee denies it, or vice versa, or that you should even have to present the same information twice to 2 different sources. That makes no sense whatsoever. So the new paramedic station.
You want to turn your mic on, sir?
I
Thank
turned
you.
it on. So the new paramedic station, the RFP, anticipated date was June the 20th, but I think it's actually going on today, with a close of July the 13th. And a big thank you to paramedic staff and to Chief Chevalier for helping us work through that. There will be a mandatory site visit the week after next, so we'll have a pretty good idea of what the bidders are. But I do provide the caution that given the season and how busy contractors are, there's likely to be pressure to push that back. If we do need to have a special meeting, I suspect we would be able to do it virtually, and that would be fairly short, but I do also respect council's summertime, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that that we can get it to council on our July cycle, but it may be week after. Just a human resources update, and this is our standard update, and frankly, things are not getting any better within the healthcare sector, particularly RNs, RPNs, PSWs. Still very difficult to get for long-term care. On the paramedic front, we were hoping to hire 25 on our annual part-time recruitment. We're down to 15, and they are on the road now. They're on the road now, so that it will help during the busier summertime, but it is getting increasingly difficult. This is part of what we're working on with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus as well. It's all right to announce all of these new long-term care facilities and expansion of paramedic services, but if we aren't putting the the students through the schooling system to get them here, it's not going to allow us to hire. So we do have at any given time 30 to 40 vacancies at Fairmont Home, and we could be hiring another 8 to 10 paramedics at any given time. The difficult part with paramedics is there's a fairly rigorous employment startup in terms of in-class and rent logs before they get go ahead to work alone. So it's a problem that's not going away, but it's also putting a lot of pressure on our human resources staff to try and keep up. The effort you used to have to put in to get one recruit is now double and triple to get one recruit. A number of key administrative positions have been filled, and we'll talk about Brianna in a moment, but we were
Did
successful.
she stay in the room when we did that?
It would be best if she left. We were successful in a couple of finance positions with payroll and benefits, which again was a difficult hire. And we currently are recruiting for Brianna's old position as an administrative clerk, and we'll be doing some reshuffling of duties there, recognizing that there won't be as many reception duties. Barb is working on that. We are simultaneously and at the same time negotiating with QP OPSU and our other QP local. Nothing is going off the rails at this point, but nothing is going quickly either. But we'll be providing updates to council as we move through the fall and we have more scheduled. To date, we've only had one investigation, and as council is aware, we do have a number of obligations under various pieces of legislation for investigations, and where possible, we complete them internally, which means for the most part, Barb is leading those. Our HRIS project that we started jointly with the County of Leeds and Grenville, and received the grant funding for, we're still aiming for a early fall finish of that and going live, but it is taking a lot of time, particularly given the recruitment challenges. So we're taking away from that, and as well in the finance department takes a lot of time. And we did develop a right to disconnect policy, which we've shared with the townships and with all staff. So engagement and communications for May, strong engagement across all online channels in May. The top performing landing pages, Frontenac County continues to be the career section, the ferry scheduling, sailing information, and the KMP trail. And collectively, those 3 pages account for about 20% of the entire traffic for the site. So, top social posts related to our May dates for first responders, National Nursing Week, Paramedic Services Week, and Personal Support Worker Day. And also strong traffic around the announcement for the new paramedic station. Now is really a month of the year, but my apologies for my typo, as well as social media audiences. We're quite engaged by the rainbow picture over the Island ferry, submitted by one of our crew members, and
That's life over there every day.
every day the rainbow. The unicorn, you can see the unicorn in the background.
It's good to see the colors they give us.
So planning department update, the 3 large projects working their way through, and as well Central Frontenac is working on the zoning bylaw and have a engaged on time to help them with that, as well as our staff and the mapping GIS component as well. So a lot of comments through the Engaged Frontenac site, and I think we're really beginning to understand the value of the Engaged Frontenac site for large projects like this. And certainly Sonia and the planning department and Richard and Debbie and economic development are making great use of it. It's a wonderful tool. Planning applications have started to increase. Now that spring is here and septic inspections can begin, strong planning growth in North and Central, and things are beginning to pick up on Yount. Lots of pre-application discussions. The community improvement plan CIP, we've had 4 focus groups and 1 meeting where it was held in May to review the economic development priorities. Trail activation signs are being installed in late June, and the Frontenac app that's been working its way through the CDAC committee is up and now being populated, and our summer student is working on that. And if you haven't been to the Verona Trailhead, big thanks to Richard and the economic development team and the grants that they've received to support that. I think it's a wonderful addition to the Verona community, and certainly an improvement over the Dust Bowl.
Sir, we have a question? Yes, Ron, go ahead.
It's a comment. It looks beautiful. They've done a fantastic job on it. It really does look great.
It does, I noticed it this morning.
Yeah, I'm getting lots of views, certainly on the weekends. I was through 2 weekends ago on the parking lot this fall. So, there will be a ribbon cutting date announced. We're just working with their funding partners on that one. And just a reminder of open farms in the city, and we're getting good cooperation from the city as well. The farms will actually be ticketed to make sure that we got the right staff and they're training people away. But the dates are September the 10th and 11th. And Richard, Debbie, and our summer student neighbor are working on that in the city of Kingston. So I'd just like to welcome back and congratulate Brianna on her appointment as executive assistant. As you're aware, Angelica has moved on to Loyalist Township. And, our loss is Loyalist Township's gain, but at the same time, Brianna comes with a lot of skills that will help her with this. She's trained as a law clerk and knows her way around meetings, has supported our virtual committees and meetings, and is supporting Madam Clerk Jeanette, who is at the AMCTO conference this week. So welcome, Brianna, and be prepared to see pictures of baby Easton and the cute little fellow.
I was going to say, she's got a lovely picture on both her cell phone and computer.
Yeah.
13 months old now?
He just turned 1.
Just
Yeah.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Danielle Dixon, who was at the front counter, has accepted a position as the administrative assistant in emergency and transportation services. So Danielle is now actually working on the other side of this wall, but is still helping out with a lot of things in the background for that position. And Matthew Fody accepted a temporary full-time position for human resources assistant. Caroline Heath left us to go to Leeds University, so backfilling that. And Yuko McAvoy is a payroll benefits person. And we'd like to thank Jacob Nagor, who was our payroll clerk, who's moved on. So with that, if there are any questions, Ward?
Yes, Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is about LiDAR. Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, last year, they're gearing up to do a LiDAR project with Mississippi Valley, all the way to watershed, which includes North Frontenac. And is their program going to be redundant if the LiDAR project you're talking about was? Like,
It's the same project. So
it's the
during
same project?
Yeah, so during the budget process, Kevin negotiated with, because there's actually the Rideau Valley, the Mississippi, Quinte Conservation, and Cattarauqua were all part of that project. So we negotiated a price and we received a grant application. We received a municipal modernization grant to help support that. So you will have all that and your contributions included.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Kelly before we get on with the audit report? Okay, well, thank you, sir. Did we have a motion to accept that report or not? I don't think so. Okay, the next one is, thanks very much, Kelly, for the update. Oh, I failed to turn my mic on. Yes, we have a resolution for corporate services. That one?
Yeah.
Recommended report, yes, setting a public meeting.
Do you want to move the big up to the top? We had it at the bottom because we weren't sure if they'd make it.
Okay, KPMG is with us. Is council okay if we move the audit report up so that we get that done first, and then KPMG people can get on with their day? What number was that? 54. Now, if Jeanette was here, would she want us to do a resolution to move it, or we good with a friendly movement? What was it?
64.
Oh, yeah, it's right here. It's G and H.
What page?
It's the last report though in the recognition, so it would be great here.
Find it out. Okay. Well, notes on.
Yes.
Okay, we're moving to report G with Howard Allen, and I don't see Howard on the screen, but I think I saw Serena. All right. Okay, Lori Cooper's with us from KPMG. Welcome, Lori.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I'm certainly not Howard, but certainly happy to be here to speak to the audited financial statements along with our audit findings. Serena is here as well this morning. And between Serena and I, we will walk you through the highlights of our report if that works for everyone. So to kick things off, I think most of you know why I'm here this morning. So we, as a firm being KPMG, did acquire Allen & Partners last fall. So we've been working very closely with Howard Allen and the team, including Serena. So with the onboarding of Allen & Partners to KPMG, I've taken over as the lead engagement partner for the County of Frontenac. So with that, we have pre-circulated our audit findings report for your review. Between Serena and I, we will walk you through the highlights of our report, but certainly we'll welcome any questions to the extent there are any on any of the content you see or hear. So where we are today with respect to the audit is we are essentially complete. The draft financial statements have been pre-circulated for your perusal. And certainly through the course of our audit, the audit went quite well. Certainly a little bit of a different lift this year, certainly transitioning from one firm to the other, but certainly a lot of hard work on the part of management. And certainly that was much appreciated. So subject to the approval of the financial statements here today, today would be your audit report date. Our contribution to your annual financial statements is our draft audit report, which will be finalized and dated today. It is a clean audit report for a standard audit report in Canada. There is language in the report this year that speaks to the fact that the opening balances were opined on by the former Allen & Partners. So with that, jumping into the actual numbers themselves, I'll pass that over to Serena on page 2 of our report.
So good morning, everybody. I think you can't maybe see me. I can't get the video to start.
We saw you for a moment, but then
yeah.
We didn't hear
there
you
we go. Okay, are we good there?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you. Thanks for having us this morning. And so if everybody has a copy of the audit findings report, I'm just going to speak to the financial statement highlights on page 2. So the page 2 is our balance sheet, our statement of financial position. And what you'll notice on there this year is that the significant changes on the balance sheet are, we have a strong cash position where we did liquidate some of our investments into the bank account, which is accounting for the major change between the cash balance and the investment balance there. I think some investments came due, so we rolled them into the bank account. And then we see our accounts receivable have gone up, mostly just due to one lower tiers payment that's outstanding at the end of the year. Our liabilities, we can see there's an increase in the deferred revenue, and that's the community paramedicine funding that we received. That wasn't all spent, but we're allowed to carry forward to the next year to use. And then also an increase in the obligatory reserve fund, mouthful there, but that's really just our gas tax. We received some nice gas tax monies, and we didn't spend that all or transfer it all to the lower tiers in the year as we typically do. Also, we see an increase in the employee future benefits, and that's a change for some WSIB liability that we needed to show on the balance sheet this year. Our non-financial assets, so those are our tangible capital assets that we speak to every year. I know you've heard Howard speak to over and over again, but additions of 1.5 million offset by 1.8 million of amortization against them. So were there any questions on that statement of financial position?
Any questions? No, everybody's got it in front of them and very clear. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so then maybe just on to the next page. Page 3 is our statement of operations. And what we can see there is our revenues are higher than our budgeted amounts by about $4 million. And that was largely driven by increases in government grants. We saw lots of grants for the ambulance service and for the Fairmount home, mostly relating to COVID, which actually then brings us down to, our increase in expenses in the same line items, mostly payroll, lots more payroll this year to deal with the impact of COVID. And what you will note, though, is that the segmented disclosure, so at the back of the financial statements, we kind of break down your expenses by category: payroll, materials, interest on long-term debt. There were no significant changes from the prior year. So an annual surplus of $2.9 million, so a little bit higher than our budgeted 2.25. So, strong ending position for the county in the year. Any questions on that statement?
You see none in the room, so carry on, Serena.
Super. Any questions on the financial statements in general?
No, I think it was so clear. Nobody's got any questions.
All right, so I'll pass you back
They
over
like
to
the
Lori.
surplus at the end of the report.
Yes, yeah. Super, so I'll pass that back to Lori then. She'll go through the rest of the audit findings report with you.
Thanks very much, Serena. So you'll see a consistent theme throughout the balance of our report from the audit side of the house as well. Looking on slide number 4 of our presentation, we've given you an update from our audit plan in terms of where we have completed our audit. You can see there, based on our audit plan, everything was certainly executed in accordance with our plan. We had set materiality this year with respect to the financial statement overall at about 2% of your prior year expenses, which amounted to an $800,000 amount in aggregate. The areas of focus, I would say, were consistent with past practice, certainly focusing on revenue recognition and the performance criteria related to those individual revenue pieces, along with a focus on the expenditure side of the house, primarily around payroll as well, being a significant bulk of the expenditures. A financial statement audit in Canada still is required to continue to address the risk of fraud, the presumed risk of fraud in any financial statement audit. So we have executed those procedures as well, and certainly no significant findings to bring forward to your attention. Scrolling through, if we stop just briefly on page number 8 of our report, at the top, you should see significant accounting policies and practices. Fiscal 2021 was somewhat of a status quo year. There were no new changes to either the auditing and or accounting standards, but we have included in our package certainly a forward looking as to what is coming that will be, I would say, a significant impact to the municipal sector. There's a new accounting standard coming into play in fiscal 2023, which is titled Asset Retirement Obligations. So still somewhat early days, but starting to have more fulsome conversations with clients, including your own, relative to the impacts of that new standard to make sure that we're all in a good position when it does come into play. The balance of our report in the appendices is fairly general in nature. I think I've certainly touched on the highlights, and perhaps this is also a good place to stop and welcome any questions from the group relative to the audit.
Yes, Fran.
Well, now that you've introduced the future implementation, sorry, of asset retirement obligations, what does that mean?
Sure. So I can give you a little bit of an overview. So basically today there's an accounting standard that is required to be considered called contaminated sites. And it's very prescriptive in nature, whereby, there's specific decision trees, whether or not, assets are in use and productive use or not. This new standard is going to essentially eliminate that current standard today, being contaminated sites, to say, irrespective of what use a tangible capital property may or may not be entailed, it needs to be considered. So to the extent there might be contamination, to the extent there might be underground tanks, to the extent there might be asbestos in buildings, to the extent there might be lease arrangements whereby you need to return the leased premises to their original condition, all of those things will get scoped into this new standard. So there is sort of intricate accounting mechanisms to consider the initial adoption of this standard, but it will ultimately over time have an impact on the annual surplus deficit through amortization and such. So it is going to be a fairly significant lift, I would say, to certainly inventory the items that will be in scope, and certainly will be part financial exercise in terms of the mathematical calculation, and part certainly physical plant related in terms of the inventory of assets. So without getting into more detail, hopefully that answers your questions and gives you a little bit of a flavor of what is coming.
Yes, Jerry?
That's a follow-up to Francis' question. These, you say contaminated properties. What about brownfields that we picked up, old garages and so on? We picked up because of arrears and taxes. Are they going to be coming towards an asset for the township in the same relationship as like a brownfield is now? Are we going to be responsible for that as an asset?
I think so, but Laurie, do you have any comment on that, or is that
absolutely. So I can defer to management as well to some degree, but certainly if it is the corporation's asset, it would get scoped in as part of this new accounting standard. To the extent there are requirements to remedy those items based on a regulation.
Bill, did you have a question? We've been fidgeting there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, an asset retirement, does that include hard equipment that municipalities would perhaps at some point, if they auction them off and get some kind of return from them, how's that going to affect this report?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair, I assume those assets would be sitting on the ledger today as part of your tangible capital assets, and to the extent they are disposed, they would come off and those proceeds would be part of the financial activities for the year. To the extent they are disposed of prior to the implementation of this standard, that would no longer apply. Does that answer the question?
It's somewhat, it's just as clear as dirty water at this point. I'll wait till I see the rest of the regulations. Thank you.
So maybe, Mr. Chair, without going into a lot of detail, there's a lot of conversation in the sector. The fortunate piece, I would say, for the municipal piece is that it's fiscal 2023 and it's a December year end. I dare say certainly in a year's time, there'll be a lot more information coming forward. as some of the other public sector organizations with March year ends, like our friends in the healthcare space, along with higher education, they're dealing with it earlier than the municipal space. So certainly feel comfortable from our perspective to be able to provide the support that is needed, because it certainly is a heavy lift, certainly over the course of the last several years relative to the implementation and adoption of other new standards that have come into play. So I'm glad to hear that you're engaged to hear about it, because it is a big one coming.
Thank you for the explanation. If there's no more questions, we do
question?
have a resolution to accept this.
Dennis?
Under, item H.
Ron.
Oh, Ron, sorry, with the small pictures, I didn't see it. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Thank you very much, Warden. We have an item coming up later in the agenda, approval of our asset management plan for core assets. And under the regulation that is quoted in that report, it's only related to infrastructure like roads and bridges, etc. And we make no mention of our other core assets, such as Fairmont Home, paramedic stations, our corporate building. In your professional opinion, should that be included in an asset management plan? And second follow-up to that question, what was the outcome of assessing our assets in that regard?
Hopefully I remember through you, Mr. Chair, all of the pieces to that question. So the implementation of asset management planning has been somewhat of a staggered process to meet the requirements. I would say, yes, it would be prudent in terms of, overall asset management planning to include all of the assets, including Fairmont Home, recognizing there are other regulations with respect to that operation. And I think I forget the third part of your question.
Ron, what was the third part again? I see your lips moving, but I don't hear you.
Paramedic stations.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just the second part of the question was, what was your overall, I guess, assessment of our assets?
So maybe perhaps, Serena, I will pass that question to you, certainly having more historical knowledge than I do at this stage. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Alex is also at the mic. He might have a comment there.
I'm actually just going to comment on the previous question about the asset management plan. So the asset management plan is to update, sorry. Our asset management plan per the ministry guidelines, which is their definition of core assets. So in terms of what we own, what they call a core asset is limited to bridges and culverts. In terms of expanding that plan to everything, we have until July 1, 2024, and of course, the intention is to then include buildings, the fleet, and other assets at that time.
Thank you. And Ron, did you get all your questions answered?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if there's no more, I guess we'll read the resolution and then we'll have another discussion before we close this part of the meeting.
Report 2022-064, 2021 County of Frontenac audited financial statements, moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Deputy Warden Higgins. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac received the Corporate Services 2021 audited financial statement report, and further that the Council of the County of Frontenac approved the 2021 audited financial statements of the Corporation of the County of Frontenac. And finally, that the Council of the County of Frontenac approved the transfer of the year-end surplus of $323,657 to the stabilization reserve.
All good. Any questions on that? Before I call the vote, I just want to thank Alex and his team for all the work that went into this. I know there's a lot of detail that never gets to this table, but Alex and his team are working day in and day out to get to this point in the year where we get a good and clean audit report, and particularly nice to see a surplus that's carried forward. So if there's no more comments, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Serena and Laurie, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Our pleasure. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And now we'll move back to where we were.
A.
Right here, okay. Okay, corporate services, we do have a resolution there.
Report 2022-063, setting up a public meeting for the business case study on communal services, moved by Councillor Vanderwall, seconded by Councillor Martin. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac receive the report, corporate services, setting up a municipal meeting for the business case study on communal services, and further that the County of Frontenac host a public meeting in combination of in-person and virtual on Wednesday, July 13th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the Township of South Frontenac.
Any questions? Yes, Alan, you got the floor.
Thank you, Warden. Through you to our CAO, something that I've been at least monitoring and concerned about is in the original reports from WSP, there was discussion about taxation as being part of the planned financing for communal services. And when I've raised the matter with our CAO, it's been clear that that has been not any longer part of the consideration. That particular information has not been included in the business case. And I wonder, I just want to ensure that when this, at least at this meeting, that this is clearly brought forward for discussion and or that the business case itself can be amended prior to that meeting so that it's clear that that's not any longer included. Thank you.
Sure.
Certainly through any of the townships or back through county council, as I mentioned in my briefing, it currently stands as a draft. So this isn't necessarily the final document that would go forward. So once the public participation processes come forward, it can be amended by this council or a recommendation could come from any township. I certainly agree with Councillor Revel. There is no mechanism for a municipal service corporation to tax or to require a municipality to pay something. It's not like a conservation authority or a library board. It's a corporation that's owned by the municipalities. The only tax dollars are the initial contribution. So providing that clarification, if that's what council wishes, can be done at any point in the process, right up until the final approval.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Having seen none,
Yes.
I'll call the vote.
Dennis?
I think you're frozen. Your picture's frozen, but
Okay.
go ahead, Ron.
Thank you very much. As everybody knows, and you see later in the agenda, I do have concerns going forward, and I think it would be prudent if council had a discussion to address my concerns before we had a public meeting.
I guess that would require adding to the next council meeting.
Whenever you, the warden and the CAO figure that's necessary. But I figure the sooner the better. I don't want to go into a public meeting raising concerns and not showing unity with the county proposal going forward. So I think it's prudent that we have a discussion as a council first before we start presenting at a meeting. I understand it's a draft report, but I do have concerns about the going forward. And I want to have a discussion with council first to determine whether my concerns are valid or not.
That's right.
Should that be maybe a notice of motion or something if he wants to discuss it, or can it be just done? I don't know how you want to interject one other before we do this one or vice versa.
I understand the process that requires a notice of motions. Is that correct?
So there's two thoughts here. It's a settled matter of council at the draft stage. So in order to reconsider that would be a motion to reconsider, which would require a notice of motion to reconsider and 2/3 of council, at which point you cannot debate Councillor Higgins' for Deputy Warden Higgins issues, you can only debate whether to reconsider or not. That would reopen the draft document. The other way to look at it is purely a draft document. And at any point up until the point that, and I'll only deal with county council because there will be debates at each municipality. At any point until it is approved by all 5 municipalities or whatever municipalities are in favor, it can be amended.
So on that note, then, if he does have concerns and it comes to the public meeting, if they're really valid concerns and the public agree or rest of council agree, well, then that could be adopted into the plan. So at any point, it's not official until that draft plan is adopted.
That's correct.
Then I
So Ron, I guess the consideration is, do you want to put a notice of motion later in the meeting on this item?
Not sure. Let me think about it. When we get to that item, I'll have a better idea. From what I'm hearing, we can go ahead with the public meeting. I can raise my concerns at that public meeting, and we can redo the draft if necessary. Is that a correct statement, Kelly?
That's correct, Deputy Warden. Anything up until the point that it gets approved by participating municipalities, it can be amended.
Okay. I just wanted to avoid any embarrassments and show unity when we have a public meeting. So based on what you said, I'm okay with going ahead with the public meeting. Not happy about it, but I'll go ahead.
Thank you. Any other questions before I call the vote? All in favor? Carry. The next one, we have one on the nurse call bell system over at Fairmount.
Report 2022-067, authorization to proceed with replacement of nurse call bell system, moved by Councilor Rebel, seconded by Councilor McDonald. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac proceed with the purchase to replace the nurse call bell system, and further that any surplus on the municipal contribution in 2022 should be used to offset the cost over budget to purchase and implement the nurse call bell system. And finally, that County Council authorize the use of the Fairmount Capital Replacement Reserve for any county share exceeding the capital budget and the municipal surplus to purchase and implement the nurse call bell system.
Any questions or comments on this resolution? Yes, Jerry.
Yeah, after reading the report, I believe that because of the cost overrun, this really should be a budget item for this fall for the new budget. It's almost 100% overrun on the original cost.
Right.
I think because we do have some healthy funds, that this is something that needs to be put in place sooner than later. Put ourselves in the position of this call bell and needing help. And I think we shouldn't put it off. We should do it now. We just had a good surplus. There's got to be some funds there that we could, it's not going to get cheaper. Everything's going to get more expensive. So bite the bullet and do it now.
Ron?
I don't like these things coming forward mid-year and all of these conversations about adding things on. I'm inclined to think that I am more comfortable when these things go through a budget process and they're vetted properly, and then we deal with them. So I don't like them coming forward now. I would be much more comfortable if it was deferred to a budget process, because there's going to be a lot of other things, whether it's the paramedic, whether it's the administrative office, whether it's whatever it is, there's a lot of things coming forward. And so that's my opinion. I'm more comfortable of waiting. I don't disrespect what Francis is saying about if you're working in it. I don't know that part, but that's my comments on the financial.
Alan?
Thank you, Warden. So I guess it's my understanding this was budgeted for replacement this fiscal year. Is that correct, Sue?
Yes. I defer to Susan for the timing.
Yeah, like this.
Either, both.
The budget
comment. It was actually anticipated to be replaced in 2019. It's taken us to this time to get to it. With the pandemic, of course, not. Your mic. Sorry, it won't go on, someone must have.
Okay.
So originally it was budgeted in 2019. It's been brought forward. So I agree with Fran's comment that it will only increase in price. And that's my anticipation if we delay it. I also want to point out, and I wish David Ballard was here today, that our information services or information systems department has some serious concerns with the current system and its viability to continue to provide assistance for residents who are calling for nurses. So please be aware of that if you decide to delay it longer.
2 to 3 years behind when we.
Correct. It was budgeted in 19 and not done in 2020. So we brought it forward budget wise several years and it's not occurred, but the pandemic being part of the reason why it hasn't.
Thank you.
So Warren, excuse me if I may follow up with that comment and look at it. It's like any other thing. If we budgeted for this year, and there's an over expenditure or the actual tender comes in over budget, we tend to find ways to deal with it. And I support the moving forward with the completion of this work. I do think in terms of the resolution, I'm clear in terms of how it's to be funded. It talks about being funded over the municipal surplus, presumably from this year. The motion previous to this was that municipal surplus was going to some other reserve. And I just wanted to clear how we're actually funding this. I support moving forward. Just wanted to clear how it's to be funded. Thank you.
What reserve will be moved out of?
Thank you, through you, Warren. So the intent would be, if there is a surplus in 22, we would take from that surplus to fund the overage. If there was not a surplus in 22, we would take from the capital reserve, which was
Thank you.
So it's not like we don't have the money there. It's, we're not going to be borrowing or, yes, Ron, go ahead.
Well, I guess maybe in the report, it wasn't clear that it's such an emergency. I guess, and the second part then is, I know COVID hit, but from 19 to 22 is a long time.
We've been dragging this one for years.
That's right. So that, there's a little bit of the problem with the delay, but the report doesn't show that it's as critical as some people want to say it is. So then I would have to change my mind.
Okay, any more before I call the vote?
I want it fixed before I get here.
Okay, next.
Warden?
We can't get it that quick.
I want that done.
Okay, ready to call the vote? Yeah, oh, sorry, I think you're frozen on the picture there, so just speak up, Ron.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Warden. In this report, what I'd like to see in future reports under the financial statement is the impact to our reserves and our financial status. I'm a little surprised that it came in, like others are commenting, at the price, and it's almost double the price. And I understand we do need to do it, so council obviously has no choice but to go ahead. I'd like to recommend that as we're going through for budgets in the future, that we not just rely on inflation rates, but actually go out and actually get some costing of some of these systems to be included when we discuss budgets in the future. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Warden. So we had gotten it cost in 2019. The issue with renewing an accurate quote, it's not actually going on Google, you can get people in there and spec out. With the pandemic, couldn't get people in 2021, so we took the 2019 cost, put an inflationary factor on it, and unfortunately it missed mark.
Anything else? I'll call the vote then. All in favor? Carried. Yeah, okay, Ron, I see your hand now. Thank you. Okay, we got one on the core assets. Diana, you read it?
Report 2020. Report 2022-070, approval of the asset management plan for core assets, moved by Councillor Higgs, seconded by Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac receive the asset management plan for core assets report for information, and further that the clerk be authorized to bring forward a bylaw later in the meeting to approve the asset management plan for core assets attached to this report as Appendix A.
questions or comments? Having seen none, oh, Ron, Councillor Higgins?
Yes, in the asset management plan, we're talking about culverts and bridges. I didn't see anything in there for North Frontenac. I saw Central and South, but I never saw any assets in North Frontenac. Would like an explanation.
Says I got that question.
So three words. So this is limited to the assets owned by the county of Frontenac. So anything owned by the county of Frontenac would be on the K&P Trail, which at the time, the assets applicable would be central and south, so nothing for north. So anything north would be, I'm assuming the bridges would be at the township level.
And nothing for the island either. Go ahead.
So we don't own that trail north of Sharp Lake?
So the county of Frontenac would own the trail. Is there a bridge that we missed in North Frontenac or culverts?
I'm sorry, Alex, I'm having trouble. Can you speak up a bit?
Was there a bridge or a culvert in before the end of last year? On the portion of K&P Trail in North Frontenac?
We can definitely take it away and review that. We did capture everything.
Okay, so would the bridges be included at some point in the future then, once the trail is complete?
Yeah, it'll be an evolving document. So as bridges, culverts, other assets are added, we'll incorporate them in there as well.
Thank you.
Probably
and then another question. Thanks, Alex. The other question I had is in relation, I was talking to the financial auditors. Would it be prudent to include our other assets in our plan?
That's three words. Yeah, absolutely. We will be including them. So this essentially to continue to be in line with the regulations as of July 1, 2022, which the core assets as defined by the ministry would be bridges and culverts. So next step will be to include our buildings and fleets, plans to have that completed by July 1, 2024.
So the paramedic stations did not have to be included this year. 2 years down the road, they will be.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
But just
why
to point out, to be clear, we do condition assessments on those buildings. They're just not required to be reported in this formal format. The council has approved condition assessments on all of our assets, and as they get added to the regulation, they will appear in this report.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. And we got the Integrity Commissioner.
Report 2022-068, extension of the agreement with Eric Burles as Integrity Commissioner for the County of Frontenac. Be it resolved that the council received for information the corporate services extension of agreement with Eric Burles as Integrity Commission for the County of Frontenac, and further that the County of Frontenac exercise its option to continue the services of Eric and Burles as Integrity Commission for an additional 1-year term.
Any questions on that? I'll call the vote then. All in favor? Carried. And we've got another one on an investigation by the Integrity Commissioner.
Report 2022-069, report received from Eric Burles, Integrity Commissioner, complaint filed against a member of council, moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Revelle. Resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac received the Integrity Commissioner report, Code of Conduct Complaint 2022-01, submitted by Megan Barrett of Eric Burles, Integrity Commissioner, dated June 2nd, 2022, attached to this report as Appendix A.
Any questions or comments on that report? Having seen none, yes, Councillor Higgins, or Deputy Warden, I should say.
No problem. Thank you, Dennis. I'd like to address council, if I may, just to address the complaint, if with the permission of the warden.
Yeah. Yes. Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you. Okay, I apologize. I'm not in there in person. I really wanted to be in person when I discussed this investigation, but COVID sort of put a nail into coffin on that one. I want to start off by saying it was never my intention to blame or accuse staff directly. I'm always of the belief that 99% of any issues arise are related to a process-related problem and not to an individual specifically. On February the 8th, 2022, I sent an email to identify the fact that the Communal Services Project Consultant provided the Planning Advisory Committee with a report recommended stating that we were only allowed to have a municipal service corporation to manage communal water and septic. This recommendation was adopted by the Planning Advisory Committee as well as County Council and is in the process to be agreed upon to go in the direction by each of the county townships. The consultant's report had stated that a private utility is not a viable option and stated that it must remain publicly owned. At that time, I fully supported that. And as you see in the report, was questioned that I was acceptable of what was agreed upon. As you see in the report, though, in my opinion, this is an incorrect statement related to private utility. And a private utility is allowed under the Safe Water Drinking Act and in fact provides guidelines for its use, titled a guide for owners and operators of non-municipal year-round residential drinking water system. This means that a communal water and septic system can be private or publicly owned, and as a result, we were proceeding without understanding that we have the private utility option to consider as well. So based on my discussions with the consultant and the ministry, I feel the statement in the report is related to urban water and septic utilities and was not applicable for a rural setting whereby an MSC is the only option. In addition, I found that the provincial policy statement they were applying in the report is outdated, and our project file report was not updated to reflect the change. Planning has not been updated the project file to assess and possibly update the project with the new 2020 PPS, and we were being guided by the 2014 PPS. What I'm reading here is a prepared statement that I made yesterday, and we had some discussions this morning. And I understand now that this is a draft report that can be changed in the future. To me, this was a very important information when I discovered at the time, and I wanted all county and township councils to hear. And in my haste, I sent an email that was not crafted very well. And I directed that email to the Director of Planning versus going through the CAO. And for that, I'm guilty of not abiding by our code of conduct. And I deeply regret the email that went out in this manner. On February 9th, I sent an email, which was the following day, to the Director of Planning and copied the clerk and the CAO stating, Joe, I never intended my email to reflect what Kelly is implying below. I was disappointed, but never intended to question your professional capabilities. After reading the email many times, I can see how it could come across that way. I won't say any more here now that this will be investigated, but know now that I regret the implications the email may have implied by those reading the email, and I will publish a formal public apology to you when this is over, no matter the outcome of the investigation. Might lose my voice here. It was clear in the original email that the consultant's report recommendation was one we endorsed, and it was not staff or council specific recommendation. To me, we were all relied on the consultant's report to make the decision to proceed with a publicly owned MSC model. I was also surprised to see on today's agenda that staff is recommending a public meeting ahead of the agenda item without considering information I provided in that regard. Again, we discussed this morning, so what I'm saying here is not really applicable any longer in my prepared statement. When I received the official complaint from the Integrity Commissioner, I have to say I was shocked and lost a lot of sleep at what staff included in the report, in that they tried to build a case that had nothing to do with the email and the MSC, and some of the presumed allegations were inaccurate in nature. To build a case and charge that I contravened the code of conduct related to discrimination and harassment, improper use of influence, and council policies, procedures respectively, in my opinion, is unacceptable. The investigator dismissed all those allegations except the ones related to the roles of staff, and I accept that outcome. I view these types of allegations as an assault on my integrity and has a potential to defame my character, and that many of the allegations had nothing to do with my original email and identified inaccurate accusations. I want council to understand the allegations brought against me and my response in the report. And what I'm reading today is I feel staff went beyond the original allegation. I'm relieved the investigator agreed with my input on these matters, and I thank her for her professionalism throughout the investigation. I do, however, take full responsibility for everything that transpired, as I'm the one that sent out the email that launched the investigation in this manner. I'm of the opinion that this could have been handled in a much better manner to avoid the unnecessary costs and to ensure a process by which a council member has the opportunity to address council before an investigation is launched. It is my opinion that any complaints going to the Integrity Commissioner should involve council first, and that staff should not have the authority to bring these types of charges against a council member without an opportunity for discussion and ensuring the facts are clearly understood. I believe the proper protocol for complaints against a council member is that staff should contact the warden, as it's council's responsibility to address the conduct of council member based on input from staff. To that end, I accept the results of the investigation report, and I am now publicly apologizing to the director of the planning in the manner that I addressed my concerns. I understand how upsetting this was for the director. In future, I'll be more conscientious of how I address my concerns to the county staff and ensure I follow the chain of command and acknowledge that the CEO is the direct point of contact in such matters going forward. I also want to state that this is an important lesson learned for me, and I'll be much more diligent when dealing with these types of issues. And I hope that this will help other council members for falling into procedural complacency like I did. Thank you for allowing me to address council.
Thank you, Ron. And just want to let you know, Joe Galvin's not with us this morning. You probably can't see that in the room. Any other comments or questions before I call the vote on this one?
Mr. Warden, I think it's important to clarify that private services was the essence of the report. As the Integrity Commissioner noted, it was discussed 125 times in report number 1. The MRA agreement was discussed another 12 times, which is the mechanism to implement private services. In report number 2, it was discussed 28 times. Municipal responsibility agreement, which is the required document to implement private services, was discussed another 18 times. Municipal responsibility agreement was the subject of legal input that was reviewed by both the committee and council and each of the councils. So that option is available and was thoroughly discussed as part of it. I also report that the business case study supersedes anything in the WSP reports. As I mentioned, those are provided strictly for background information. The current PPS still supports that. The Housing Task Force is recommending the exact process that we are following as a way to deal with this. Each municipality still remains in authority over their planning documents. They can implement a private and enter into a municipal responsibility agreement at any time. That is still clear, and that is concisely stated in the municipal service agreement business case study. No municipality is compelled to enter into the municipal service corporation. If any one municipality opts out, they can make that decision. The decision to hold a public meeting was through a notice of motion provided by the deputy warden back in January, and we are following through with that now that South Frontenac has provided their comments. So we are proceeding as per the motion of County Council. The Municipal Service Corporation, as we discussed earlier, has no authority to levy municipalities or to affect decisions made by your municipality. We're still 100% free to implement a private option should your township council so wish through your very own planning process. That will require municipal responsibility agreement. I take great umbrage that the deputy warden is intimating that the option to enter into municipal service corporation somehow eliminated the option for a private service. The entire purpose of this was to look at options to avoid having developers to pay for a process twice. Once to implement it, and a second time through the municipal responsibility agreement, which was thoroughly discussed through all of those meetings. To suggest that the planning advisory committee did not meet to discuss this, the deputy warden is the chair of that committee, could have called that at any time. The proper process is for a notice of motion and discussion at this table, direction to staff, or making implications that decisions would be part of a municipal campaign are wrong. The legislation with respect to the integrity commissioners sets out how this happens. It is not a choice of council. It is not a choice of staff. If the deputy warden wishes to see that change made, then that change needs to be made through the Minister of Municipal Affairs and a change to the Municipal Act. It is not a council decision. It is not a staff decision. Finally, I note that this is the process that is being supported by the province of Ontario. Any one municipality could opt out at this stage. The province is looking at recommendation number 44 of the Housing Task Force to make this the vehicle that municipalities would use to implement communal services. I think it's incumbent upon all of council to understand that we are entering into an election, and that using your position as a sitting member of this council or a member of your own council to influence staff is inappropriate. The integrity commissioner made that comment, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to understand that when you're acting on a campaign, you're not doing it in your capacity as mayor, in your capacity as warden, deputy warden. You are doing it independent, and the municipality, whether it's the lower tier or the upper tier, cannot put forward resources to assist with your campaign. The Municipal Election Act is entirely clear on that. As I said, I take great umbrage that the deputy warden feels that staff are beyond their bounds with this, and feel that we followed the process to the T. And the only thing at this point is for the deputy warden to apologize to the director of planning and economic development, who in no way intimated that that private services were not possible, or that somehow the provincial policy statements of the province of Ontario had changed such that this was no longer a viable option. That is in no way true. I will stand up for the integrity of our director of planning and economic development every single step of the way. And to say you didn't intend it that way, I think is a disservice to our director of planning and economic development. One of the hardest working individuals you will ever meet in municipal world, and I've been here for 40 years. Joe Gallivan takes his integrity and his responsibility to his professional institute extremely to heart. And those kinds of allegations jeopardize his ability to work as a professional planner in the province of Ontario. And I will defend staff. Where staff are wrong, I will correct staff. The correct process was a notice of motion, or to call a planning advisory committee, of which the deputy warden was the chair. And I apologize that I'm upset, but I feel that the apology delivered by the deputy warden to this council is a justification, not an apology. And I will not apologize for that opinion. Thank you very much, Mr. Ward.
Any other comments or questions? Well, I think we'll call the vote and then call a break, because we've been here for 2 hours now sitting down. All in favor of the motion on the table? Opposed? Okay, well, how about a 10-minute break? Carried, yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah, I should have said that. Carried. Yeah, public health says you shouldn't really be sitting down for more than about an hour at a time. So
We're guilty of
Yeah,
been here far too long, so.
Especially at our age.
that's right.
Are we ready to go, folks? And Chris has got us back live.
We're back live.
Back live. We're on item F, county corporate strategy. I think Brianna has a resolution to read for us.
Report 2022-071, status and timing of county corporate strategy and related projects. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Higgs. Resolved that the Council of the County of Frontenac accept the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer report, status and timing of county corporate strategy and related projects report for information, and further that the Council of the County of Frontenac approves as follows. That staff immediately commence the request for proposals, RFP for a facilitator to commence the 2022 public consultation process for the 2023-2026 county strategic plan as outlined in the report, and that staff be directed to include in the 2023 county budget for consideration a line item to complete the 2023 to 2026 county strategic plan process.
Thank you. Any questions on that? I better get this on or Chris won't be happy with me. The report was in there twice, so you should have got to read it.
Right, through you, Mr. Chair. You've laid out a couple of issues in regard to for the strategic planning to look at. I'm wondering if we should include perhaps the communal's effort as part of that strategic plan also. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any comment on that, Mr. CAO?
Absolutely. Yes, we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. Anything else? I'll call the vote. All in favor? And the next one we did, KPMG, so we'll go to the first quarter financial report. Any questions on that? Or the reserve report, any questions? And we had a wonderful report in from Fairmount on by Susan and Jerry. Sure. Or did you write it all this time?
I think it was Susan.
We know where it came from. A very clear, concise report. Thank you. If there's no questions on that, we'll move on to a report on the building design.
Report of the Administrative Building Design Task Force, moved by Councillor Vanderwall, seconded by Councillor Martin, that the report received from the Administrative Building Task Force be received and adopted.
Any questions on that? We've had several committee meetings on it, but it's fairly clear. If there's no question, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Ron, we're still, yes, okay, I see you there now. The next one, the RFP. We got a resolution there for the renovation and addition.
The report of the Community Development Advisory Committee.
Did I miss one?
When you approve the first part, you're approving the whole recommendation.
Okay. You don't have to read the 2022-058.
We can read that out here. I'll read that out and then we'll do that. So 2022-058, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, review and award the RFP for the renovations and additions for a joint administrative facility for the County of Frontenac and Cataraqui Regional Conservation Authority. Be it resolved that the Council, that the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer review and award of the RFP for the redevelopment of the administrative building report be received, and further that the Council of the County of Frontenac authorize the warden and clerk to enter into an agreement with Emons and Mitchell Construction LTD for the renovations and additions for a joint admin facility for the County of Frontenac and Cataraqui Regional Conservation Authority in the amount of $4,490,000, subject to the approval by the CRCA.
Any questions? Yes, Ron, go ahead.
I guess it's a little late, but it never dawned on me till now. Are we looking at parking too? Because we're gonna put a lot more people here Was that ever in there or did I just?
I think I saw something in there about
Okay.
parking, didn't I?
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes. Yes, there is a parking component to this one.
Yeah, I forget where it was, but there was some comment.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd just like to make a general comment that COVID has taught us that we can still run the operation when people are working from another location or home. So the good thing is, as we move staff out, things will run very smoothly because we know how to do it. We've done it for 2 years.
Are you suggesting maybe we forget about this whole thing and just have people work from home? And
That's it. We can
Is that-
save money. Council as well.
is that? Yeah, Bruce is agreeing. Yeah, Bruce, go ahead.
No, I just wondered how many people are involved in coming in from the conservation.
23. I don't know, what's the number?
23?
Mid-20s.
Let's see.
Does that mean 23
I bet you.
23 officers?
It's in the plan.
You gotta turn the mic on.
I guess we got too many weeks. There you go.
The entire paramedic suite, so from
Yeah.
that door back becomes a conservation authority.
And it's color coded so people know where to go. Unless you're color. Anything else before I call the vote? All in favor? So I guess we can proceed, and Alan, I guess CCR is meeting later today on this, so
6:30, 6:45.
yeah, very good. And we got a report on the Community Development Advisory Committee.
Moved by Councilor Rebel, seconded by Councilor McDonald, that the report received from the Community Development Advisory Committee be received and adopted.
Any questions? Yes, Alan.
Thank you, Warden. I just want to ensure that as staff bring forward the business case for the budget cycle this year, that we look at a full range of options in terms of how the economic development process will move forward in terms of staffing versus outside agencies or however that's being handled. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? I'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. And the next one, Community Development Advisory Committee Destination Development Plan.
So it's the same thing, but I'll read out the recommendation. It's 2022-059 Community Development Advisory Committee Destination Development Plan, 5-year implementation plan. Be it resolved that the County Council endorses the Frontenac County Destination Development Plan implementation described in report 2022-059. And further, that staff be directed to include destination plan implementation in the planning and economic development budget and business plan 2023 to 2027.
Any questions or comments on that one? Having seen none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. And we have to return to council now.
Can you take over?
Yeah. The council.
Moved by Councilor McDonald, seconded by Councilor Higgs, that council revert from committee of the whole council to council.
All in favor? Carried. What do we got? Action reports? Committee of the whole adoption.
We have the adoption of the report of the committee of the whole, moved by Councilor Smith, seconded by Deputy Warden Higgins, that the report of the committee of the whole council be adopted and that the necessary actions or bylaws be enacted.
Any comments, questions? All in favor? Carried. I guess I didn't see your hand go up, Ron, but I'm not sure if you're frozen.
If I'm frozen, I'm in favor.
Okay, good. And the next one, do we have a notice of motion to be given at this meeting? Having seen none, we'll move on to a resolution by the Community School Alliance, a wonderful group.
Community Schools Alliance Action Plan and Social and Economic Impact for Small Communities in Ontario, moved by Warden Doyle, seconded by Councilor Rebel. Whereas all students should have the opportunity to attend an elementary and secondary school in their home community. Therefore, be it resolved that council hereby receives the Community Schools Alliance Action Plan and Social and Economic Impact for Small Communities in Ontario study And further that the province increase the rural and northern education fund to 50 million. And further that should be current metro on accommodation reviews and schools closures be lifted. We ask that the moratorium remain in place for schools that qualify for the RNEF until a thorough review of the education funding formula is completed. And further that before templates required by the 2018 People Accommodation Review Guide are developed, there be consultation with school boards and community groups, including the Community Schools Alliance. And further that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Ontario municipalities, Community Schools Alliance, local MPs and MPPs, and the Premier of Ontario.
Any questions on that? I'm on this committee, and before the moratorium was put on school closure, there was about 600 rural Ontario schools on the chopping block. And I think that was put in place in 2015. And Minister Mitzi Hunter put it in, and then ever since then we've been meeting every year with the Minister of Education. They keep moving that moratorium forward, but we're fully expecting that probably it'll get removed soon. So we'll be back into negotiating, trying to keep rural schools open.
Warden?
My comment there, our local school, North Frontenac, the only one we have, was scheduled to close. And it was down to, I think it was 32 students. And now we're up around 60, it's growing. And thank goodness that school didn't close. If it had closed, we wouldn't have got these young families to come live in there.
That's right, and there was a discussion around our Community School Alliance table. Once you close them, it's too late.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have a lot of ghost towns across Ontario. So.
Warden?
Ron was actually first.
Yes, Ron, go ahead. And then
Just so the question I have, Dennis, is because you're part of the committee, is the province actually making a move to lift the moratorium, and when are they anticipating to do that?
I think that'll be up to the new Minister of Education, but Leachy kept it on. It kept thinking about it, but they had lots of other things on their plate. Maybe the pandemic was one of them. So they just didn't need another big decision like that, which and generally he was in support of the moratorium, and they don't have all the plans ready. What do they do after? And by increasing from 20 million to 50 million to get special funding to help rural schools will really help as well. Yeah, Bill?
Thank you.
Just in further discussion, if you're going to close rural schools, what you're going to do is you're going to exchange the cost of the rural schools from the school environment to a busing environment. Because when you look at places, for example, the ones that we use, Lebanon, if you're going to start busing kids, they're going to be on the bus for an hour and a half in the morning, and an hour and a half in the afternoon. You're talking about very young children here, so I think that moratorium should stay for a while.
Yeah, and we got into the discussion, what impact does that have on kids? They can't participate in after school activity at the school, and they can't go home and have a part-time job or socialize with their kids. So there's long-term mental health issues too. There's lots of issues. Yes, go ahead, Ron.
So I just have a couple of comments. One is the employees of the busing are way lower cost than second
minimum wage.
Secondly, the only thing I would caution, and I hope this is fine, but Prince Charles Public School in our community was on there for 10 years to be closed. Never did happen, and I'll bet you they've invested $1 million in it last year. So even though they're on there, it seems like they're on there as general discussion, and some of them move forward, but a lot of them are just on that plan and don't come to reality, thank goodness.
Okay, enough on that. We'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody. We've got a long list of communication. Any comments on those? I haven't seen none. Move on to other business. I guess under that, there's something I should mention. I told my council on this Monday evening, I will not be putting my name forward to run in the next election.
Your wife has finally convinced you, has she?
You got it. Yeah.
Or threatened you?
That too. All of the above. Okay, we've got the first and second reading. Oh, well, I guess I gotta ask, is there any public questions? I guess that's up to Chris if you can see any. Don't see any. Okay, well, we'll move on to the bylaws.
First and second reading, moved by Counselor Martin, seconded by Counselor Higgs. Resolve that leave be given the mover to introduce bylaws A through C that have been circulated to all members of County Council, and that bylaws A through C be read a first and second time.
Questions? All in favor? Carry. The third reading.
Third reading, moved by Counselor Martin, seconded by Counselor Higgs. Resolve that bylaws A through C be read a third time, signed, sealed, and finally passed.
Questions? All in favor? Carried. And Ron's hand went up immediately that time. The system's good. And journals. Bylaws. Okay, there's one more. No, that's okay. The adjournment, we got somebody move that.
Adjournment moved by Counselor McDonald, seconded by Counselor Rebel, that the meeting be hereby adjourned at 11:20 a.m.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you for filling in for me, Warden.
Thank you, and hope you're feeling better soon. They say it usually lasts 3 or 4 days, then you start feeling a little better.
This is my third day and I am feeling better. Feels like a mild cold right today. Yesterday I had a temperature 104 and it's back to normal today.
Well, that's hot.